Welcome to the Go Find Nervous Show, the show where we find out 3 experiences that made our guests nervous on their journey to success and how they overcame them. I'm your host, Jake Bolig. We have a very special guest today. I'm excited to speak to this gentleman. This is a man who's overcome 47 surgeries. He's working on a documentary. He raises money for different foundations, which we're going to talk about in just a second. He's going to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, which is a fascinating story once you hear his story. The largest mountain in Tanzania in Africa, 19,341 feet. He's going to hike that. And he's got a lot of cool stuff to offer. And I'm really excited to talk to him and inspired to listen to his story and share it with you all. So today's guest is Jason Nelson. Jason, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, man, before we tell your story, I want to know the foundations that you currently work with. There's a couple, and I want to know that because I want the people listening to get it driven home, the good that you're doing. So if you could tell me that first, please.
Yeah. So I actually support 2 different nonprofits. They both kind of support the same mission that I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is the Arizona Burn Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
which has been in Arizona for almost 50 years. And really they're focused on the life of a burn survivor after being burned, from the start of your accident to the end. They're there along the way, financially, emotionally, in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The other foundation I help support is the Valleywise Health Foundation, which really is the hospital system, the community hospital system for Arizona, Valleywise.
Okay.
They oversee the burn centers, so their role in recovery is a little different, but we all have the same goal, is to make sure that burn survivors from day one are taken care of with whatever they need. Like I said, whether it's financial support, whether it's just emotional support, whether it's just a voice to talk to say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. They're there for those people.
Right on. That's good. And for the people listening, it might allude to your story a little bit.
Yeah.
The people that you work with. So if you could, why are you so passionate about it, working with these organizations? If you could take us back to your story.
Yeah, I'm going to take you back to February of 2014. Is kind of where really my life changed. My trajectory changed. Everything about where I was going changed. So February 9th, 2014, I was a landlord. I owned a house in Gilbert. And my tenant just moved out, so I was there fixing, toilets and painting and just cleaning up the house for my next renter. So I had been there on a Thursday, a Friday, and February 9th is actually a Sunday. And I was there again, fixing stuff. About 3 o'clock, I decided, what, I'm gonna take a cigarette break, and went in the garage to smoke a cigarette. So I was in the garage and went to light my cigarette, and there was an explosion.
Wow.
Little did I know that my cigarette actually ignited a natural gas leak that was in the street in front of my house.
Wow. So the cigarette ignites this gas leak, and then you remember it, don't remember it, wake up later. How does that work?
Yeah, I remember everything.
Wow.
I lit the cigarette. I felt the explosion. I didn't know at the time what had happened. I actually thought my hair was on fire. It was my first kind of reaction to what was going on. I lit the cigarette. It exploded. And I tried to get out. I was trapped in the garage in a panic. So I actually ran into the garage door trying to get out. Never could get out. Panicked, ran back through the house. I wasn't on fire. It was a flash fire. But I ran back through the house, came out the front door, and there was a guy standing there, had heard the explosion from down the street. It came running down and found me. At the time, I didn't know it, but I was an 80% burn. Well, I ended up being burned from my knees to my ankles, and then my waist to my face. I didn't know it at the time. I was just in shock.
And 80% burn means like full burn. I've seen the picture, and for the people listening or watching, I will put a picture up of you in the hospital. That's not like a light burn. That means this is a serious deal.
Yeah, I was 20% second degree, which is considered a really, really bad sunburn, for guests who are listening. 60% of my body was third degree, down to the muscle in certain areas. So technically, some areas were fourth degree, but 20% second degree, 60% third degree, and there's my 80% right there. My back, my arms, my chest took the brunt of the force from the burns. But I was conscious the whole time. The guy in front of me called 911. The next thing I remember, I look up and there's an ambulance coming down the street. So the ambulance pulls up. I actually walked into the ambulance at the time and answered a couple questions from the paramedics, and they shot me up with whatever, and it knocked me out. So that was February 9th. I actually woke up and kind of remember my next memory is really not until about the end of April. So
Wow.
in that time, February to April, I spent the first 6 weeks in a medically induced coma, just because the pain is unbearable. So they put you in a coma,
Wow.
really to get you through the first couple weeks. And then the drugs I was on kind of limited my memory, really until April when they started kind of weeding me off some of the different drugs. I knew where I was at finally. Um, I knew what had happened. I didn't know to the extent that I had been burned. I just knew where I was and I had been burned.
I have so many questions. I wish I had 2 hours with you. So I got a question that just popped into my mind though about 6 weeks. Was it weird waking up 6 weeks later? Was there a moment? Because you watch movies and where people get in comas and they wake up later. How was that? I'm
Yeah,
just.
I don't remember a lot. I don't know that this happened during when I was induced into a coma, but I had a dream that I was in Las Vegas for whatever reason, and my only concern was to get back to my children. I have two children,
Oh
a son and a
wow.
daughter. So my only concern was I'm in Las Vegas. I've got to get back to Arizona. So I thought
Wow.
I was on a plane. I had all kinds of weird dreams. And the final thing I remember is trying to get out of bed at the hospital, and a nurse stopped me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I got to get back to my kids. I got to get back to my kids." And she said, "Do you know where you're at?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in Las Vegas." And,
Wow.
and she corrected me and said, "No, you're in the burn center in Valleywise Health, and you've been here since February." That was kind of my, this is what I
You
remember
you
about
coming
being in a
out
coma.
party. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. But that parental instinct inside of you, it was not completely accurate to reality, but it was that say I'm in Vegas.
yeah,
I got to find my children. That's really interesting. I find that really
yeah.
that's
It
really
it
interesting. Yeah.
was. I tell my wife the same thing that was a moment where I was truly worried about what was going on, and it wasn't because of the condition I was in. It was because my kids were alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you go through how much recovery time before you can actually leave the hospital?
So I went in February 9th. I didn't leave until July 4th, and that was my first discharge. So I discharged from the hospital directly to an inpatient rehab. It really was, I had been in a coma. I'd been laying in bed for months. I had to learn to walk again. I learned to talk again because I was at a trach, so my voice didn't work like it normally does now.
Right.
Um, I had occupational therapy and physical therapy every day just to kind of get me back to a point where I could actually go home and finish my recovery at home. A couple weeks in, closer to August, I actually found out that I contracted MRSA while I was at rehab. So the MRSA, for anyone who's not familiar, MRSA is a staph infection, um, resistant to most antibiotics.
Mm.
Well, I ended up getting MRSA, and it destroyed all the grafts in my back. I had been grafted once, multiple times
Mm-hmm.
just to cover the burns on my back. So to get to that point where I'm about ready to go home and to get diagnosed or told you have MRSA, all your grafts have been destroyed. We need to readmit you, and
Mm.
you're going to kind of start again, um, start over
That's pretty
from.
heavy right there. Yeah, that's pretty heavy to be at the finish line, and then the race director says, no, 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 you got to run the whole thing again. Let's roll. Like that's a.
Yeah, yeah, and to go through more surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
um, more dressing change, just the whole recovery that goes into a burn injury.
Right, and the dressing change is horrible, right? From what I've heard, it's quite painful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing like it in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people there's not enough drugs
Mm.
to sedate you to go through dressing change. It's basically like you slid into home plate without a shirt on,
Mm.
and it's raw, it's painful, and then they come and scrub you down.
Oh
So
wow.
it's an experience in itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I tell a lot of people I had a bad case of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
severe. Not really from the explosion that occurred, but more from the things that occurred in the hospital. And it wasn't negligence. It was this is what's needed to treat,
Mm-hmm.
you know, third degree burns.
Mm-hmm.
So I fought dressing change every day. I cried.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it. It's there's nothing like it. It's hard to describe.
So how do you get past that? What kind of mindset do you go into? Because you know it's coming, right? So like in life, we have many challenges, and not none of them, many of them aren't nearly as difficult as a dressing change on a burn wound. But oftentimes we have that fear. We talk ourselves out of it. You can't talk yourself out of this one. What kind of mindset did you have to put yourself in, or did you just have a countdown? You said, "All right, F it, let's go," or how did that work?
I would tell you a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Uh, the big thing that made a difference for me during this was about choice. That I had the choice of what time my dressing change occurred. I had the choice of who did the dressing change. Some people are better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Not every nurse is perfect for a dressing change. So for me, it was about choice.
Mm.
Choice of who did it, choice of when it happened, and besides that, a lot of morphine.
Yeah, I bet. Choice. That's really interesting. That a little bit of choice allowed you to get through it. So now you go through the recovery, you go through the surgeries. What I want to talk about is there has to be, like you talked about PTSD, the mental aspect of that. And I know many people walk around with insecurities about lots of different things. Did you have any bouts with that? Any kind of depression? Any kind of that went along with that?
I had a ton. Before my accident, I used to run Spark races, Tough Mudders, the Warrior Dashes of the world. I would run those.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in great shape. I mean, I was probably in better shape at 40 years old than I was at 20 years old.
Mm.
So to go from being, I wouldn't say an elite athlete, but an athlete, to learning how to walk again and feed myself was probably one of the most difficult things to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And then you throw on the PTSD on top of it, and it's really from medical procedures, from dressing changes,
Right.
things that occurred in the hospital. But the PTSD really took over my life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't like the way I looked.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look like myself. I was 40 pounds lighter with a shaved head
Mm.
and dressed, in medical garments the whole time. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't look like myself. I didn't feel like myself. And then, like I said, the PTSD on top of it. The hardest part for me, I think, was admitting that I was a burn survivor.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd be a burn survivor. I didn't want that life. I think everyone has kind of an image in their head of what they expect a burn survivor to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be who I was before.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm dealing with the burn, I'm dealing with the PTSD, and I don't like either one of them. They were both terrible. So finally, I think, it was a lot of poking and prodding by my wife, my parents,
Mm-hmm.
to really take the same level of care that I got from the burn center and take it and do it for myself, but get the therapy that I needed to overcome the PTSD.
Mm. Was there a specific moment that you remember, a time that you shifted? Oftentimes when we go through troubling situations, there's a distinct moment we remember where we make the decision that we shift and we say, okay, you know what? That's how it was, but today it changes. Do you have any moments like that, or was it a gradual change for you?
No, there was a change, a definite change. And during my kind of tenure in the hospital, I met with different burn survivors. They would come to the hospital and share their story
Mm-hmm.
about what their burn was like, their injuries, how they overcame it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of people along the way telling me, different things.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that stands out is they said it takes a full year from the date of your injury before you feel like a normal person. Before you feel like you're going to survive, you're going to go on to do whatever you're going to do, but you finally feel, the skies are lifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can see the light at the end of the rainbow. So mine was February 9th, 2015, almost a year to the day later.
Mm-hmm.
It was also one of my last surgeries. So I think between, surviving the first year of something I probably shouldn't have survived,
Mm-hmm.
finishing up one of my final surgeries, really for me was the point where I was like, time to move forward.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd tell you that made a big difference for me is things like this, like sharing my story about what happened, what I've overcome, and what I'm kind of doing now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big deal for any burn survivor, I think, is to share their story of survival.
Well, yeah, I applaud you for coming on and doing that. It has to be helpful. And for anybody that goes through anything traumatic, I think to be able to get to a space where you can talk about it openly is going to allow a person to be more comfortable and with that situation, right? So
Yeah.
you've been able to talk about it now, get on shows. I know you've talked on a lot of news shows, a lot of different places, overcome some tremendous challenges so far. And now, not only did you overcome that, you didn't say, I want to just live a regular, normal life. You said, I'm going to do something about this. And now somehow that turned into, I'm going to go climb the highest mountain in Africa. So tell me how, tell me how that happened, man.
Yeah. I was a hiker
Okay.
before my accident. I actually had pictures of Havasupai up in my hospital bed, in my hospital room, to kind of remind me of what to look forward to, that, you'll get back to
That's a
where you
beautiful
were
place. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
from, you'll get back to where you were. So I had a lot of passion about hiking before.
Right.
And then 2 years ago, my doctor actually approached me and said, we're taking a group of burn survivors, anywhere from age 11 all the way up to, I'm actually the oldest at 48.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to hike Mount Kilimanjaro just to show people that a burn injury isn't the end of your life. No matter how small or how large it is, there's still plenty to be conquered out there. So he said, hey, we're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with 9 other burn survivors. We're going to document, your story from the day you arrived in the hospital to the day you summit Mount Kilimanjaro. And use that to give other people inspiration that they can do whatever they want. There's not a life-ending injury by any means. And in fact, I tell people, I think going through what I went through and where I'm at now, I feel like my life is more complete than it ever was before.
I was going to ask you that. Do you feel like a more powerful version of yourself now than you did previous?
Oh, hands down.
Yeah.
I'm definitely stronger, a lot more compassionate for what someone else is going through. Because it's not always, you can't always see, looking at someone, what their struggles are.
Right.
Most of your listeners would look at me and go, a burn survivor? Never. Right? But it's the, I would say it's the journey and the overcoming of the struggles that makes it that much better.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great point that you bring up as far as the compassion aspect of it is we don't know what people are going through. Everybody's going through something at different levels. And we all want to paint this facade of everything's fine, but a lot of times it's not fine. And if we could have more compassion, like you said, you have, it could be a better place, this world that we live on. But I applaud you for what you're doing, man. Climbing this mountain is pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's interesting. I've had several friends talk about climbing Kilimanjaro lately. I don't know what is in the water in Arizona, but it's something in the water. So you're going to document it. It's going to be a documentary, right?
Yes, sir.
And then we have a couple minutes left here. What is going to be done with that documentary? What are you going to be doing to promote? What is your passion right now as far as your involvement with burn survivors?
Yeah, so my passion really is burn survivors on their journey to get to that first year. Kind of when, like I told you, the first year was a struggle, and I finally got to that day, and it changed for me. So my passion is to make sure those burn survivors don't feel alone, that someone's along with them on their journey, whether it's in a hospital visit or a text or, they watch the Kilimanjaro documentary when it's over and they go, wow, I can do that. There's nothing holding me back. It's really, it's all mindset,
Yeah.
It's something I'm looking forward to. And I can't wait to be at the top for all the other burn survivors who, whether they didn't survive, right, or they're just struggling with everyday things that occur, but I want them to look and go, well, I can do that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and I think they will. I think they will do that. We have just a minute left here. Where can people get in touch with you, Jason, and how can they get involved with what you're doing or reach out to you for anything?
Yeah, I tell people I'm an open book. They can text me, they can call me, they can hit me up on Facebook. I'll leave all my information with you so you have it.
Okay, and I'll post that in all the links as well so people can see that.
Yep. But I'm like I said, I want to be there when that burn survivor needs someone to talk to, and be that light that they need to make sure they're going to be okay, and that their story is as good as mine. There's a lot of setbacks along the way, things we haven't talked about. But to get them on the same path I'm on is ultimately my goal.
Right on. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Jason. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. You're an inspiration. I've been inspired. You've moved me emotionally in different conversations we've had, and I appreciate you, and I salute you, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Hey, one last thing before you go. Leave a comment. Which example did you most align with from today's show? I'm curious. I want to know. Also, if there's somebody that you want to find out what's made them nervous, leave their name in the comment. I'll try to get them on the show. Follow me on social media at Jake Bolig. Follow the show at Go Find Nervous. And if you don't mind, subscribe. It helps me out the whole algorithm thing. I appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Go Find Nervous.